Band's good.
Good evening. Before we have our meeting tonight, we would like to remind you that 2 weeks ago we celebrated here in Muskogee our first Indigenous Peoples Day. And we tried to thank the organizers at that time, but they were too busy doing what they needed to do to be here. And tonight we have Brittany Cuevas and some other people she'll tell us who are. And would you please come up and tell us how it went, because we're all proud of it, and we appreciate all the work you put into it.
Yes, she's going to pass out our brochures, which you have seen from the beginning, but I want to hit a subject on that. So on behalf of Muskogee, Oklahoma Native American Association, as the chairwoman, I would like to thank you for your support and sponsorship. It is really appreciated. Not only by passing the resolution on December 18th made a big, important day. It invokes an international reaffirmation calling upon promoting and encouraging and respect for human rights and fundamental freedoms to all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. Why is MONA important? At this point, the members of our greater community are willing to take Native Americans into the system, but they are not very tolerant of our traditions and attitudes and behaviors. Perhaps what has changed is that now the dominant culture has come to link assimilation to acceptance and integration. Nonetheless, assimilation seems to remain necessary for Native Americans who seek to work and live outside their indigenous cultures and communities. With this, we hope to connect the indigenous disconnected. So in Muskogee, we have such a diverse population, and it was very important to us that we made big strides with this event, and not just one day. We made it a 4-day weekend, which also affirms that Muskogee is supported as the heart of Turtle Island. And if you don't know what Turtle Island is, look it up. They even did like an alien thing about it on YouTube, so check it out. Okay, so I'm not done yet. Almost done. Okay, so today, over the weekend, it made such an impact because we were dealing with people who have generational trauma, anxiety, depression, claustrophobia, low self-esteem, lack of identity, people who deal with cancer, racism, drugs, alcohol, incarcerations, poor traditional education, poor health care, technology gaps, living on survival every single day, making it hard for us to communicate, to dance with others, and to be happy with others. And this is what was needed for so long. It's really important to us. And I want to pass this on to Brandy and Briar, our treasurer, and Talisha King.
Hi, everybody. I'm Brandy Amber. I'm the treasurer. Basically, we just wanted inclusion again. We wanted awareness. We are building a resource library for those who feel as strongly as Brittany. And then I myself, I am Cherokee, but I don't know my culture, so it's been lost. And so we're working to bring that back and try to piece together the history that has been lost. And so that way the marginalized community can feel at home in their home again. Talisha, did you want to say anything?
Hello, my name is Talisha Stevens. I too have been very blessed to be a part of MONA. MONA also links people together with their Native American culture as they find out that it is a part of their family's heritage. I found out in a tragic way. My grandmother passed away of Boynton, Oklahoma, and we found out that her mother actually had a roll number. So now all of my mom and her 7 sisters were all getting our cards and things like that, even though when I was growing up, as a little girl, I already was included into my Muskogee Creek culture. I just didn't know that that's who I was, and I wasn't being federally recognized. But now I have that opportunity, not only just to, know that I'm Native, but I will be federally recognized as Native as well. So I think that's very important. There's a lot of people like me that, have that in their heritage as being brought up within the culture, because you're born within your culture. That is who we are. That is how we believe. That is how we behave. That's our family bloodline. That's just how it is. But as far as, blood appropriation, those technical words and things that were devised before I was even thought about, those come into play, and those have some kind of significance where I live and how I work, and, being an American. So that's a part of Mona as well, bringing in the link, bridging the gaps so that we know who we are. Identity is a thing, and it's very important, and it's not going away. As far as membership is concerned, the membership members wanted me to make sure that I do announce how many active members that we have at this time. So I will just do that on their behalf of the membership committee of Mona. As of right now, we have a total of 49 members in our organization, and it's growing all the time. Some people were waiting on payments and things like that, but a lot of people were able to come and volunteer their time and drove a long way for the event that we had in Muskogee. So that was pretty awesome. Thank you for your time.
I'd like to say one thing. As it speaks to the importance of knowing your bloodline, I personally, though I don't know the heritage, I have a card, and I am only able to go through nursing school at this time because of a Cherokee Nation scholarship. And even though I don't know the language, I was trying to find out, I was told it was a full-time 2-year course. And I'm in a 2-year full-time course for nursing. So the best way I can give back is working in an IHS, but it is so important to get people out of the cyclical traumas and dysfunctions, generational poverty, substance abuse, depression, through education. And just knowing your bloodline and knowing that there are resources out there that can help you get out of that is of utmost importance, and I'm living that.
Yes, and y'all help with that every day. Just a few more numbers and I'll be done. We were able to pay over 25 Native American entertainers and artists, underpay them, but and each about 200 people in attendance at our Stomp Dance cultural demonstration. It was their first time, and a lot of education. It was a blessing for sure. Over 75 participated in our Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women March, incarcerations, and everyone that's been affected. A great turnout, impactful speakers that are still circulating on the Facebook. We have over 3,250 followers. Again, we started meeting in January and passed our bylaws in June. So all this just came together. Spent about $4,075 on advertising, plus tons of free advertising. We got so much support. So thank you, Mado. I want to show you our banner and we'll be done. And we have t-shirts. This has a whole meaning too. You can ask later.
This thing, huh?
Yeah, I did.
So help me here.
Maybe we can get a picture afterwards. I don't know yet.
Miss Mayor, could the other ladies that's in it come up there with them? We have 3 more ladies that came in.
Oh,
Yeah, come on.
have to get where we can see them.
We can show these guys.
And we'd like to thank you for the electric teepee out there. That was great sponsorship. Yes. Christmas tree.
That's awesome.
Widow, Mado, thank you. This is Lauren Cunningham, a part of our membership committee. Sandra Parrish, our event committee. She did a lot of work. Do you want to say something? You did a lot.
I'm glad it's It's over. But yeah, I appreciate everyone that was involved in this and all the help we got from the city and then the surrounding areas and the different tribes that put in for this. And next year is going to be much bigger and better. This is a learning experience for us. Thank you.
And our Vice Chair, Mary Crawford.
Oh,
I want to thank you guys for allowing us to have this. We really had a great time. Brought out a lot of different tribes here in Muskogee. So thank you for allowing us to have this.
well, thank you for all the work you put into it, and we know that's just the first step, and we'll be behind you the rest of the way, too.
So what about the Oklahoma Arts Council? You're going to include
Oh.
us on that?
Oh, yeah, on the upcoming conference. We'd love to have you participate. Yes.
Yes,
Widow.
yes. Thank you very much. And now, we better get down to some more business. We will call to order the City Council meeting of October 28, 2019. Let's stand for the invocation by Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson, followed by the flag salute.
You would bow with me with prayer. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, as we come to you this evening, dear Lord, we're so thankful for the many blessings that you bestow on us each and every day. Dear Lord, we're thankful for the blessings of the rain that fall upon us today and have over the last couple of days, and we complain. But we have no idea, dear Lord, how much you bless us each and every day and how the provisions that you provide for us. We thank you, dear Lord, for the diversity that we have in our community, and help us that we will cherish it and we will embrace it. We thank you, dear Lord, that you provide for and how much we love each other in our community and we support each other. Help us that we will be able to look at each other and through new eyes and be able to realize the preciousness that we have and the diversity that we have in our community. We ask, dear Lord, that you would be with us and the councilmen and women as we take apart the meeting tonight and we look at the business. We ask, dear Lord, that you'd give us the wisdom that we need in making the decisions tonight. And these things we ask in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
Attention, salute, pledge. Roll call, please.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman. Jamie Stout.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Kale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
I make a motion we approve excuse Marlon from being gone.
Second.
Okay. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout. Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. I assume you've had time to review the amended minutes of the City Council regular session of October 14.
Make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, the motion carries. The consent agenda is items 1 through 7. Is there anything any one of these that anyone wants to put on the regular agenda?
Move for approval.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I want to pull item 3.
Item 3. Okay. We need a motion for that. Okay, we'll put item 3 on the regular agenda. And
I second the motion to put items 1 through 3 and 5 through 7.
1 through 2.
One through 2, yeah,
Fourth.
I'm sorry.
Everything except 3.
Everything but 3.
All right.
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 3.
Approval to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract between the City of Muskogee and Great Plains Consulting in an amount not to exceed $143,400 for construction inspection of the 24th Street Improvements Project and other street projects, or take other necessary action.
Mr. Riley.
Yes, Mayor and Council. This is an item to, as we've discussed before, to add an inspector to Great Plains Consulting, who's been doing our inspection on our sewer line and water line work. Exceptional service. So we decided to go with them for the 24th Street project. This will add an inspector, and they will also be doing an inspection on other street projects, including the ongoing one in the southwest zone. So, and happy to answer any questions. Recommend approval.
Okay.
Yes, the reason I pulled this item off the agenda for the council, and Mr. Riley, this group here, where are they out of Muskogee? Where they out of Muskogee? Great Plains,
Hominy, Oklahoma.
Hominy, Oklahoma. So that's not connected with anything that has to do with Muskogee, Oklahoma, correct?
No.
Okay. The reason I sit up here as a city councilor for my constituents, and I had constituents call me about this issue. This $143,000 that we're gonna pay. There's somebody to look at these people's work. It bothers me that we should have in our city people qualified to look at streets, to look at parks, to look at other projects this city puts on, and our contractors, and keep an eye on what they do. Because, like I said, since I was just standing right there at that mic, I used to say all the time, the city of Muskogee, these contractors always gets over on us, and they do. They always, for somehow, some way, the work is not properly done. But to spend $143,000 for somebody to come in and inspect this work, that this company that we already paid, that got the bid on this job, is supposed to know what they're doing. I disagree with that. That'd be just like me hiring somebody to build me a house. I get a $100,000 house built. I got to go pay another $100,000 to have somebody come in and say the contractor doesn't work right? That's not right.
So, Mr. Van, this is a $4 million project, and we want to make sure that we get the best possible results we can get. And on a lot of our major outside projects, we in the past have hired outside inspectors. And one of the things we've learned in our last mill and overlay project was that we felt like having a third-party inspector was important on these major street jobs. So I agree with you. We want the best. We want to make sure we're getting what we're paying for on that $4 million street project. And this is part of the answer that we have come up with to make sure that we're able to hold our contractors accountable to having a high standard.
I agree with you, Mr. Miller. We need to hold these contractors accountable and of high standards. But if we were going to do this, we should have done it in the beginning. When we done Ward 4, when we started these street projects, this is when this project should have started if we want to do this, not in the middle of the stream. Because if you look at it this, I look at it this way. I talked to Gary, and he said that this consultant is going back, and he's going to look at Ward 3, which they're in right now, on our streets. And then they're going to do Ward 2 and do Ward 1. But they're going to, in Ward 2 and Ward 1, they're going to be there from day one. It is not fair to Ward 4 or 3. 24th Street is from Okmulgee to Shawnee. They're going to have a nice sidewalk and everything. I'm just curious in myself, if 24th Street wasn't involved, this $143,000 man wouldn't be here.
Mr. Van, we can't change the past, but we can change the future. On Martin Luther King, there was an inspector. The problem was the specifications. And all we can do is learn from the past and move forward. And but the specifications and and who done it, and who wrote them are the same, and I really want to see an inspector on this job. And I think a third-party inspector is very vital to making sure we get the right job on 24th Street.
Well, I want to see an inspector on this job too, Councilman Johnson, but I don't want to see a $143,000 inspector on this job when we paying a regular contractor. We shouldn't have to pay an inspector by law or by rights. We shouldn't have to pay an inspector to go over to somebody else's work.
We shouldn't have to pay an inspector. We shouldn't have to pay an attorney. We shouldn't have to pay a lot of things, but that's the way the world works.
May I add something? And I can kind of understand where Councilor Van is coming through. Living in Ward 3, having to ride over the roads in Ward 3, and having to deal with our constituents, we are very disgruntled by the process and the way the first stage of this mill and overlay has been ran. And so I have some questions today. You know, my question number one, what have we been doing in the past? If we have somebody in-house, you know, why are we having to take $143 million to get someone to come out to make sure that somebody's doing the work right when we already have a hired staff member? I'm with Councilman Van. $143,000 after the fact to get someone to come in to follow someone, you know, work is kind of a waste of money. What I would like to propose possibly, and I did some research on Public Works maybe getting our own full-time inspector. And I have some paperwork that I've looked up some of the job qualifications of this inspector, and even the salaries. About $60,000 a year is what this inspector is getting paid, and we're supposed to pay someone $143,000 just for one street or project, and we have a bond that has been passed, and which is important to me, a bond that we got our citizens to go out and vote for, and we got 100 miles of roads yet before us, and it would probably be good, you know, to fix it completely forever now, and to get a permanent inspector. So I can kind of understand where Councilor Van is coming from. $143,000 at this point for an inspector for 24th Street, when we actually see the need that we need an inspector probably on staff full time.
Before anybody comments, I'd like to reiterate, this is probably the third meeting in a row that I've talked about learning from our mistakes. And I can continue to do this for the next 3 years. But mistakes were made. We've acknowledged that mistakes were made. So I don't see any logic in beating a dead horse. Now, it's unfortunate that mistakes were made in 3 and 4, and it's unfortunate the way those mistakes were made. It's real unfortunate how Mr. Bigelow, what he had to put up with as a businessman. It borders on pathetic. We're past that. I could be supportive of looking at, and whether that's today or at a future date, a full-time staff member. If it made sense, we have to recognize that a new position is a new position, and it's going to be a new position for life. Maybe it's needed. We also have to recognize that, and I've seen a little bit of it. I don't know if I'm excusing it away or if it's legitimate or what. But it appears to me, from what I've seen over the past 3.5 years here, and visiting and talking to Public Works about some of these issues, that sometimes a third party is needed, a third party inspector. What happens is they're truly third party. So when the contractor, and I'm proud that we're doing things to try to firm up on our contractors when they do bids later, but when a contractor starts pointing his finger at the city, and the city starts pointing their fingers at the contractor, that's where I've seen a lot of problems. And we've got legitimate reasons to be pointing our fingers, but if that thing goes to court or whatever it is, it looks as if it's nothing but pointing fingers to one another. When there's a third party involved, almost like an arbitrator or a mediator in court or whatever, but that third party carries some legitimacy of going, look, I've sent the city emails here. Mr. Riley's department should have done a better job, and he didn't, and blah, blah, blah. Or, no, Mr. Contractor, Mr. Riley's been concerned. He's just about to throw up his hands, and I've done this and this and this and this, and the city's on solid footing, and you're not getting away with this, and we've dotted our I's and crossed our T's, and we've papered our documents. Now, I'm not suggesting that an in-house person couldn't do that. I'm just looking at things I've seen in the past 3.5 years where we were doing it in-house, and it seemed like it was harder to make a case against a contractor. And when we had these third-party administrators or consultants or contractors looking at these jobs, it seemed to me that there was something there for us to grab a hold of. Again, I'm open to a full-time deal. I just want everybody to recognize that there could very well be reasons or a logical thought process behind this. And but if it's as simple as paying a guy $150,000 to work on 24th Street and a couple of other projects, or getting a guy for $60,000 a year for forevermore for the next 10 years while we're doing our street projects, maybe that's something to look at. But it's not that cut and dried, and it's not quite that simple. But I do believe that it can be worked out and supported one way or the other.
I agree with you, Mr. Cale, and the fact that a third party helps you out in a lot in construction work, and the fact that if you'll go back and you remember some of the challenges that we had on Martin Luther King, a lot of it's soil conditions. And it depends on how those specifications were written, what the soil conditions are, what the work days are. And if we have an employee that's just on our own and it's the city's perspective. And he's an employee of the city, and he can't take that third-party perspective on the situation. And a lot of times you're dealing with soil conditions, you're dealing with the city's perspective, you're dealing with the engineering, whoever wrote the specifications, and you're dealing with the contractor. If you have a third party in there, they can really help bring that together, and especially if you're going to court, which I'm very concerned about 24th Street, that we make sure and hold everybody accountable on 24th Street. When we had the challenges we had I mean, I don't want to have any more delays than we've had on 24th Street than we've already had. And we had plenty of delays on Martin Luther King Street. And I don't want us to see now we're going to skip and we're going to cheat our community on having a third-party consultant, and we're going to try to invent our own right here at the late hour.
Well, I got a question. I mean, the way it sounds is like we're going to have a third-party person. Then we're going to probably need a fourth-party person to make sure that third-party person does his job. Then the fifth-party person is going to go over and make the fourth-party person do that. That's what it's starting to sound like. I think that I'm kind of caught in the middle on both of these, because I see where, as a city, we need to get off our rear ends and do our jobs and make sure that we're holding somebody accountable for it. But then I can also see that we probably need a third-party person to make sure that our people are doing their job as well. But it is a lot of money to be throwing at a one-time project, or maybe a two-time project, because we still have a lot of streets to be done in Muskogee. And I understand where Ivory and Councilman Reed are coming from, because it's more than just 24th Street.
Mm-hmm. I'd be interested to hear what our city manager feels about this.
Okay.
We have your opinion.
Well, sure. The reason we're bringing this forward now is not because we're changing horses in midstream or changing strategies. This is what we do on street projects of this size. Just because that's how we've done it in the past doesn't necessarily mean it's how we need to do it in the future if we choose to hire an in-house employee rather than do it this way. What we're trying to do, the purpose of this agenda item is to do what you guys have made clear to us, which is to make sure that this very important 24th Street project is inspected very well by someone that has the credentials to hold the contractor accountable to doing a good job. So that's the direction that we've taken, that we want, that you guys feel that that's a priority. That's why this agenda item's here, is to make sure that we have a very highly credentialed third-party inspector to make sure that an important 24th Street job is done. And then we've added the additional work as well to finish up the ongoing work in the southwest zone. So that's why we're here. The 24th Street project has got the notice to proceed scheduled later this week. We wanted to make sure we had an inspection ready to go when the construction starts. If we want to go another direction, we can do that. But the reason that we're here today is because this is how we've done it in the past, and we want to make sure that we're doing it well, and we're going to do it. And so we brought it forward as we have in the past. And the other thing I'd say is that in a couple of projects where we've had a third-party inspector, we've gotten tens of thousands or even over $100,000 back because of the work that they have done documenting the process along the way. So they have value in that they show areas that may not have been done right that end up saving us some of that money back.
I.e. the airport?
Yeah, the airport is a very good example.
Here's what I would suggest we do. I think both Mr. Reed and Mr. Van have a really good observation, and it's a really good point. I think that I don't know that any of us here want to delay projects at this point. Could we continue on, but have staff prepare something for council that talks about the pluses, the minuses of out-of-house inspections or a permanent in-house inspector, and even if there are certain projects, federal projects, to cover our rear end, if you will, that maybe we do have to, maybe it is prudent to hire an inspector for some of those jobs. But like these gentlemen say, we're getting ready to do a lot of projects for the city streets, for the community, and they are wanting to be good stewards of the community's money and still get good results on somebody watching over everything. So maybe that's what we should do, is move forward on this item just because that's pragmatic. Take note of these concerns because they make sense, and then let's have Public Works report to the council on what that might look like, what's good about it, what's bad about it, and then we can make an informed decision at that point and move forward.
You know, I've listened to you, Mr. Kell. I respect you. You know, I definitely respect your word. I respect you, Councilman Johnson. I respect you too, Mr. Miller, what you say.
Yes, sir.
But I have a problem. Councilman Hall, you also. I respect everybody up here, everybody's opinion. But I'm just going on what my constituents that I had to go out and that put me sitting right up here in this seat represent in my ward. They the one put me up here. None of the councilmen up here, the mayor, nobody else put me up here but my constituents. And that's who I'm up here to serve. I'm up here to serve Ivory Van's needs. I'm up here to serve my constituents' needs. And a lot of y'all's constituents' needs. But like this contractors from out of town, I always say, shop Muskogee, shop Muskogee. We're taking our money out of Muskogee, giving it to this contractor so he can go to Harmony and spend the money there. But that's not shopping Muskogee. But like I say, you spend giving a man $143,000 when you can hire our own person. I'm pretty sure it's people out there qualified. We don't have to have that much money, spend that kind of money on this. Don't get me wrong, 24th Street's a good street. All our streets are good. But just don't change the ball in the middle of the game. We deserve better than this. Muskogee, our citizens deserve better than this. Are these taxpayers' dollars that we're spending? This $143,000?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. That's our citizens' money. That's our citizens' money, not our money. Well, it's all our money up here because we all pay taxes. So we need to take them, the citizens, in consideration instead of taking it about. I mean, it's a shame. I mean, not only on these streets. It's a shame that a lot of these city projects, which I'm not going to mention up here now because we're not on that discussion, but it's a shame that we got to take less than the best. It's a shame. Because I can take you right now and show you some work that the city, that we pay people to do that ain't worth crap. And that's a fact. That comes out of our regular citizens' dollars that put us up here to judge the money and to take care of the money and take care of their needs.
This agenda item is to make sure that it does meet the standard, and I like the idea of us looking. This is a very large project, critical for the needs of our community, and I don't want to see 24th delayed anymore. I do like the idea of our overlays and our large road projects coming up. The idea of us looking at a potential guy on staff for them, but when you're looking at a major road construction in our community going forward, we do not have somebody on staff and cannot get them whipped up to speed so fast. I make a motion for approval.
Councilman Johnson, you talking about 24th Street. That's in Ward 4. But when it came to Tambaroy and the streets on down, further going north, you didn't say nothing about hiring a projects manager then.
Mr. Van?
Let me speak. You always shut me down and cut me off.
Wait a minute. Let me speak just a minute. We need to get back to this particular subject and not stray too far.
What I'm saying, Mayor, is if we're going to talk about a street and we want all our streets done right. Not just one street, not just Golden Street 24th. We want all the streets in Ward 1, 2, 3, and 4 done right.
And this inspector will work on more than just the 24th Street.
But we are paying this inspector too much money to take our money to Harmony, Oklahoma, and to take our money from our citizens that pays us $143,000, our taxpayers. So if ever who's listening to me out there as a citizen of Muskogee, Oklahoma, I hope you listen to what I'm saying and what I'm trying to explain to these councilmen and mayor up here tonight. That's wrong to take our money and give this $143,000 to a company out of town when we should have a contractor that knows what he's doing and have a reputation to do work properly. I will turn the floor back over to you, Ms. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to make a motion that we tell the people that have been so excited for 24th Street to be built that to put off that project, to look at hiring somebody to work for the city, how long that might take, to delay the project, how much that might cost the city. But I'd like to make a motion on behalf of Ivory that we do that, and when we get somebody in-house ready to go, start the project at that time. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
I'd like for Mr. Riley and myself to think that over for a minute. We do have a notice to proceed and a contract awarded scheduled.
A couple of things to bring up. This is a monthly contract, but not to exceed. So we can go forward with this, and if we do decide to hire someone, we would stop whatever month we stop at. We can still have the inspector. Also, this inspector is adding an inspector. With the sewer, water work, and 24th Street and the other road work comes in, we're approaching $40 million worth of construction that these two inspectors will be inspecting, which we're getting a bargain on that. I mean, if you're talking about $40 million worth of construction to be inspected.
So this 140,000 isn't for 24th Street. It's for all of that work combined.
Well, the inspector we're paying monthly, the one that's here now, and he's going to add an inspector to his staff. And he does as we ask, as far as he's basically working for us, doing inspection. If we say go over here and inspect this job, he will. It's a monthly fee based on who's here. It's not hourly.
What is the monthly fee?
The first inspector is right now $11,500 a month, and the second one is depending on which one he brings in. He can bring in a less experience or more experience. So we got the flexibility of different. One is a $9,000 a month, and one is $11,500 too. So.
Who would inspect these if we didn't hire this guy?
We would try to use what staff we have. It would be very difficult to get all this inspected.
Do we have a person on our staff that would do this if we didn't hire outside?
We'd be using our staff as best we can.
Yeah, not currently.
But we have someone.
Not currently.
No.
Here's where I'm confused now. What were we going to do to get the contract started prior to this agenda item being placed on our agenda just last week? Because what the motion is, if I'm understanding the motion correctly, is that we're going to stop 24th Street. That's not our goal. It's to stop
Dead in its tracks. Dead in its tracks.
No, that's not our goal.
Well, that's not my goal.
Well, the motion hasn't passed either.
Motion hadn't been voted on.
That's
It'd be a very irresponsible vote, is what it would be.
I don't want to stop the project. I don't want to do that.
You want to hold up on the?
I want to hold up on this $143,000 man that we got to pay. That the citizens of Muskogee shouldn't have to pay, because we should have common enough sense people that run our city, that do our construction, to know how to do this work properly without having to follow them around like a little kid.
Then you need to remove your second, so his.
I'll remove my second, Councilman McHale.
Oh my, jeez.
Okay, does anyone want to make a reasonable motion?
I had a motion on the floor.
You did?
Yeah.
What was it?
Motion for approval.
I'll second that.
Okay. Boy, this is sure fun, I must say. All right, is there any further discussion?
Can I ask one question, since I'm totally new at this? Has this been a past practice?
Yes, on Martin Luther King Street, we had an outside inspector. On 43rd and 45th Street, we had an outside inspector. So on our large projects that are $2, $3, $4, $5 million, we've had outside inspectors.
And on our airport
yes.
rehab, it was very, very valuable to have this third-party inspector. Very valuable.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson?
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs?
Yes.
Patrick Cale?
Yes.
Ivory Van?
No.
Derek Reed?
No.
Dan Hall?
No.
Jamie Stout?
No.
Mayor Janie Boydston?
Yes.
Is it 4-4? It fails.
The motion failed.
Thank you.
So, we will go.
Mayor, at this point, you can entertain other motions if it's the will of the council.
I'd like to make a motion that we direct staff to explore the possibilities or to come up with other avenues of an inspection process for the 24th Street Road project, as well as foreseeable other road projects.
Second.
Before we take any further action on that, so Councilor Reed, your motion is to direct staff, but do you want to include anything related to this particular item, meaning to reject it, or do you just want the...
We came with complaints week after week of the process of what we were observing with the mill and overlay project. And so immediately we got $143,000 inspector to come inspect the streets. And what I'm trying to get at, can we get some more feedback from staff of what we can do in lieu of, in addition to?
So what the effect of your motion in a second would be that on the contract between the city and Great Plains, no action would be taken.
That's correct.
But instead, staff would be directed. Is that what your intent?
To come back to us to give us other
Yes.
details. I mean,
And I just wanted to clarify.
Yes.
Okay. Was that your second, Mr. Van?
Yes, sir.
Before before we move with that vote, Mr. Riley, Mr. Miller, would a delay in this project, well, let me rephrase that. How much money would it cost the city for a 2-month delay in the start of this project? And would it impact any agreements that we have with contractors or subcontractors by delaying a start for 60 days?
And that would have to be a discussion with the contractor. We have a notice to proceed meeting Wednesday, and whether that would affect their overall position on the project, if they're ready to go or they're willing to wait 2 months and do it for the same price.
Well, I guess that's my question. We don't have any firm contractual commitments?
Yes, we do. We have a notice to proceed, and the contract would
So
normally
we do have,
proceed.
so you just got to find out how much it's going to cost us.
Yes.
Okay, so my understanding is this, is we're not delaying the project, we just are not hiring the inspector, correct? That's what I understand.
That's what I'm thinking of.
That's what I thought we just voted on. So we're not delaying any projects.
But they'll be doing work with no inspection.
Yeah, but it's not going to
Yeah,
be
we got
inspected.
city, we got people who work for the city that can go inspect it. And if you don't, I trust our people.
Councilman Johnson, you work for the school board as a maintenance person. I know you know a little bit about streets. If that's your ward, go inspect them when they're on 24th Street, like I do in Ward 3. I'll leave that with you.
Now what?
We are not talking about an overlay job.
We've got a motion and second on the floor to direct staff to report back on in-house inspection services. And the effect will be that no action, if that motion is approved, and no further motions are made, then the effect will be no action taken on the contract at issue. But this agenda item does not permit any separate action related to the underlying contract, simply because it's not on the agenda. So if that's the will of the council, then staff would be directed to put that back on. But from what I'm hearing, that's not what's being discussed. So we won't take that action unless someone subsequently makes it. So, in other words, or state it again, the action on the floor is to direct staff to consider an issue, report on feasibility for in-house inspection services, and to that effect will be to take no action on the Great Plains Consulting proposed contract.
That will be my motion, but once again, we want to make perfectly clear, anything that we're doing is not an attempt to hold up 24th Street.
Right.
Roy,
And that's not on the agenda today, so you wouldn't be able to take that action, but you would be able to direct us to bring it back later.
That's all we want to do is just deal with the inspection process.
Yes.
Ward 3 got torn up and rebuilt before an inspector was in place. We'll live.
Roy, can we ask city staff questions prior to taking a vote?
Yes, I think it's appropriate if you were to do that. You're talking about, we've got a motion and a second on the floor, and it's part of your consideration whether you're going to vote for or against the motion. Is that correct, Mr. Deputy Mayor?
Yes.
Then yes, you're permitted to do that.
Greg, do you feel like you will need an outside consultant's expertise for the next 30 days outside of your department while these options are looked into?
Well, it would be greatly helpful than to throw someone into the fire right now on that. The initial parts of the contract are going to be setting out their schedule, improving their schedule, and just looking at it, which we can do. I can do that. It'd be helpful if this was the inspector we're going to hire to be in from the beginning instead of cutting them out at this point. But we'll work with what we have. The expertise that you're talking about is like a consultant like this has multiple inspectors in staff. So we have
My concern's
something
the
coming up
initial
that- yep,
start
yep.
on this job and the timetables that are given in the first 30 days kind of set the parameters of that job.
Right. And that's something we can take on. We can take care of that.
Okay. What about the testing of the soil?
Yeah, the testing is already a part of the contract,
Okay.
and we make it independent also. But the contractor is required to do their testing, and then we are. But the start of this project will be water line work and storm drain work underground. It's not going to be the pavement. That'll be towards the end of the project. So that type of testing would.
So you could still get third-party testing even with this passage of resolution?
Yes, that could be a separate contract.
Okay. Thank you.
Further discussion?
So on testing, the city, you don't have anybody on your staff that can test? You testing?
No, we don't have the facilities or anything to test asphalt or soil or anything like that. That's specialized equipment. So we hire
Many
outside.
streets as we got here in Muskogee, why is that?
Just setting up and running a testing lab for one city would not be very cost effective. These testing labs that do this, do cities all over, and that's how they.
It's
function.
standard industry practice for cities to use a third party lab to do the testing. Cities don't have their own labs in general.
And you get into accountability. You can sue them. You can't sue yourself.
Okay, can we
Do we have anyone local that could fill the spot for 30 days?
As far as the inspection?
Yes.
I did approach one local consultant today. Didn't want to do the inspection because of the contractor involved.
I'm just curious. Mike Stewart, he done that job how many years?
Yes.
How many years does Mike Stewart do the job?
let's stay on the subject.
I'm just saying, couldn't he? I mean, as long as he was over the street department and the public works,
It's not credentialed.
he's not credentialed.
Let's not try and make a job offer here today to anyone in particular.
Well, evidently we need something, Mr. Miller, because we ain't got nothing up here. Not in the city of Muskogee.
Well,
But Councilor Van, that way, if the action passes, that would be included with what staff would do in studying and reporting back on that issue.
Can we hear the motion again?
Yeah. The motion, which has been seconded, is to direct staff to consider an issue report on feasibility of in-house inspection services. Is that correct, Mr. Reed?
Yes.
Okay. Further discussion?
Let's make sure a yes and a no vote is correct. You know how we get confused up here sometimes. We get confused on streets. I know we're going to get confused on this.
A yes vote will be to direct staff as discussed, and a no vote will be against the direction. So if you want staff to study and report back on the feasibility of doing in-house inspection services, then a yes vote would be appropriate. If you're not in favor of that, then of course a no vote.
My concern is if you have a no vote, are we not going to inspect the street at all?
It wouldn't have any effect on that. This is just whether staff is going to be directed to study the issue. I'm done.
So, this may be an odd thing for me to say, so let me just throw that out there. But one thing that we theoretically could consider is, regardless, we're going to look at the underlying options that you've presented about whether we want to make this an in-house job or not, and the pluses and minuses of that. That's a good idea and a good suggestion. Whether the direction to staff, I understand that already. It's a good option, and we need to consider it. I think one thing that might help us get where we're trying to go and keep the project on track the most is, instead of having a not-to-exceed amount of $143,400, that we have a not-to-exceed amount of a month or two of maybe $25,000, so that And this, Greg, if you don't think that's a good idea, you can stop me right now because
That would be a good idea.
I'm thinking on the fly. So we limit the amount of work that this person will do. It gets us started. It gets us an inspection while we consider all the options moving forward. But it puts a very short time frame and a very short dollar amount on which they can do that work. I know that's different than the motion on the floor, but
that's a vote that I think everyone here could support if Mr. Reed wants to amend his vote.
Okay, I'm sorry. I guess I didn't catch all the pieces.
So what it would do, what I'm proposing, is that that right now the agreement, the agenda item reads an amount not to exceed $143,000. That while we are doing what you've proposed, which is analyzing and looking at the pluses and minuses, that we hire them for a couple of months. So we just changed that not to exceed amount to $25,000. So as we start the project, we've got somebody on the job day one, but it limits the dollar amount. It can't go, if you limit it to $25,000, that means that that no more money can be spent on that project with that vendor unless it comes back to you. So I think that accomplishes some of the goals, but as far as making sure that we look at the feasibility, but it also keeps us 100% on track with the project.
Mr. Miller, I don't want $25,000 to go to Harmony, Oklahoma at all. I don't want 1 red cent to go to Harmony, Oklahoma.
Well, I just want our job inspected well.
Well, I'm just saying. I know we want the job inspected well, but we need to consider all the jobs we done here in Muskogee. We ain't thought about inspecting well.
Every job of this size we've inspected well and had a third-party contractor.
Mr. Miller, I've been coming to that mic ever since 2005, and I've been to a lot of council and a lot of mayors before I got in this seat to represent my constituents. And trust me, I've seen some finagling going on. And I mean some sloppy work going on and still going on. But like I say, I still don't want to spend 25. I don't want to see the people. I want somebody from this city that knows something about streets that can tell them if it's wrong. Like I say, you and Mr. Garvin got the pictures that I sent y'all of some of their work just last week.
And we're
I get out, I can inspect things too. We all can. We know your eyes, you can tell what's wrong and what's right. You can tell when a job is done right and wrong, especially if you're right there from the beginning.
And what we were wanting to make sure is that when we're building a specialized road, that's a $4 million project that we're taking all the way down to the ground. Not everything is going to get picked up by somebody that's not an expert in that area. And I certainly include myself in that. So I apologize if I'm slowing things down. I know you've got a motion on the floor, and we'll take direction however the council chooses to, but I just thought of that as we were moving along. I thought of that as an idea, so I wanted to throw it out there.
And as I understand, what you're saying is that we could get started on time, and we would have enough money voted on to keep them going for 2 months, and by then we would have a good idea of what we wanted to do, and we could keep going without any delay. Is that right?
Might hire a new outside person. I think that is a very reasonable compromise, if you will.
That's still giving those people money, and that's still taken from our taxpayers. I want you taxpayers out there to hear this. They want to still give y'all $25,000 away to this Harmony person.
Mr. Van, we're learning from our mistakes. And
Yes,
we're
sir.
wanting to make sure that
Some
this
of us
project
are learning from
You know
our
what,
mistakes.
Councilman
is done
McHale?
properly.
I wasn't a councilman for all them years up here, and trust me, I've watched the city learn from their mistakes. I've watched them. I have watched the city of Muskogee since 2005 learn from their mistakes, and they've made a lot of mistakes. And I went and looked at a lot of mistakes yesterday. Y'all just don't know. I don't have a job, but trust me, I get out there and I watch and see what's going on in this city of Muskogee. Streets and all.
You've got a motion and a second on the floor.
Okay.
And it's up to Councilor Reed if he wants to make that amendment. My suggestion is if you want to pursue what Mr. Miller suggested is to make a separate motion once once Counselor Reed's has been voted on. That way you've got one motion relating to directing staff, and then, because it's already perfected on the floor, and then if someone wants to make another motion, once that one is handled, then that would certainly be in order.
Let's go that route because, once again, I believe that we have planned on fixing 24th Street. We were going to fix 24th Street. When we started raising Cain about the problems we were having with existing streets, just 2 weeks ago, we got this agenda item to hire an inspector. So I don't know why this inspector piece is going to hold up the process. I don't know why this inspector piece is so much needed before we can get it started. I'm just missing that part. Now all of a sudden, since 2 weeks, we got to have this inspector. So I want to leave my motion where it's at, and let the chips fall where they may at that point.
So can we read back that motion?
Sure. The motion second that is on the floor is to direct staff to consider and issue a report on the feasibility of in-house inspection services for public works projects. Public projects, not public works project, public projects.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
I'm sorry. Roy, one more time.
Approval to direct staff to consider and issue a report on feasibility of in-house inspection services for public projects.
And there still can be another item on this same.
This is a motion that I'm in support of.
And then you can come back and make a motion to.
I understand.
Can we please vote now?
Yes.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kell.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries.
On item number 3, I make a motion that we hire Great Plains Consulting not to exceed $25,000 to do inspecting on 24th Street to get the project moving as it is already scheduled with a notice to proceed.
I'll second that.
Okay, do we need more discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Yes. Patrick Kell.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
No.
Derek Reed.
No.
Dan Hall.
No.
Jamie Stout.
No.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes,
Motion fails.
motion fails.
It's got to have 5 to pass.
Okay. So, here we go. Anything else?
You can, if someone else has another motion on this item, they can certainly make it, or you can move on to the next item if nobody does.
Okay. Well, let's do that. Let's move to item 8.
Consider approval of resolution number 2789, approving and authorizing the incurring of indebtedness by the trustees of the Muskogee Industrial Trust to be accomplished by the issuance of lease revenue bonds, notes, or other evidence of indebtedness in one or more series on a tax-exempt or taxable basis at a premium or discount in the aggregate principal par amount of not to exceed $85 million to provide funds to complete the acquisition, construction, equipping, renovating, and remodeling of school buildings, acquiring school furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and acquiring and improving school sites related to Independent School District Number 20, Muskogee County, Oklahoma, establish a reserve fund, if any, capitalize interest and pay cost of issuance, waiving competitive bidding pursuant to Oklahoma Statute 60, Section 176G, and declaring an emergency or take other necessary action.
Mr. Tucker.
Mayor, members of the council, as your background indicates on this item, on the 23rd of which was last week, the trustees of the Muskogee Industrial Trust, which is a trust for which we are the beneficiary, voted to approve issuing bonds to fund capital improvement projects related to the passage of the recent school bond issue. Tonight we have Mark Grober, who is the attorney for the Muskogee Industrial Trust, accompanied by Stuart England, who is bond counsel that has been retained by the trust. And so I will recognize both of them to come to the microphone if they would like to make any comments on this resolution and answer any questions that may be addressed. I think one of the questions that I'd like you both, one or both of you to speak on is, we were told that the bond was $110 million, but the bond is only for $85 million. Would you be able to speak to that?
I think Mr. England will. I'm Mark Grober from Muskogee, and I appreciate Ms. Mayor and the council the opportunity to come here. I'm the attorney for the Muskogee Industrial Trust, and we had a meeting last week, and council, this is Mr. England. He's from the Floyd Law Firm, and he was
Get closer
here.
to the mic,
Pardon
would
me?
you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
There you go.
I usually speak loud enough, my wife says. Anyway, this is Mr. England. He's from the Floyd Law Firm. They're in Norman, and they handle a lot of bond projects, the majority in the state of Oklahoma. And he's here to speak and answer any questions you might have. But basically, this is what we need to do to get this school bond issue going and get the construction beginning and follow through with the wishes that the citizens of Muskogee spoke very highly in favor of a few weeks ago. Anyway, this is Mr. England.
Yes, again, Stuart England, Floyd Law Firm, Norman, Oklahoma. Thank you again for allowing us to be here this evening. I'll go ahead and answer your question, why it was authorized by the voters at $110 million, but we're only coming with $85 million. I may not be close enough to the mic, sorry. The way this works is typically those bonds that were approved by the voters are general obligation bonds that have been approved in a series. Because they're in a series, you want to know that every single one of those is good and valid with the Attorney General of the state of Oklahoma. They have to give an approving opinion on any general obligation bond. So what happens is usually the financial advisor will sell the first series of bonds, and then that will then get approved by the Attorney General. That gives them coverage for future sales as to specifically the election and everything that was fine and good with that. So once that's been done, that full 110, a portion of that's already been issued, and that's why we're coming only with a request for a not to exceed amount of $85 million, is because that first series has to be sold. That comes off that 110, and that drops us back down closer to this 85 number. And again, I'm happy to entertain and try and answer any questions you might have. I will say that the primary focus as the beneficiary of the Muskogee Industrial Trust for y'all is to simply approve this. You have no additional liability as the city being the beneficiary of the trust. This is also the second or third time that this has been done. The last one was in 2013. It's the same process all over again. Nothing's really changed. But with that said, I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I've got a question.
Certainly.
And I'm going to, hopefully you'll make this as simple to me as you can. So we had 115 million, is that it, total, or was it 110?
110.
110? Okay, and we're paying, the citizens are paying back 110 over the timeline of how many years?
I don't have the financial advisor here to tell me the exact timeline, but it's...
what might it typically be?
10 to 15, 20 on the long end. But because the voters did approve the 110, that is the full amount that can be issued, yes.
Okay, so let's just, unless anyone here knows better, let's assume that it's going to be 15-year payback. And this is all paid out of our property taxes.
Correct.
So in 15 years, we're going to pay back 110.
Well, you're actually paying it in a series. So instead of having nothing and then a balloon of 110, because it was approved in a series, and again, I don't have those numbers in front of me. I'm not the financial advisor.
Okay, just typically how's a bond issue work? So somebody's got to sell the bond.
Right.
So just go through how, and we'll just use these numbers. How does a typical bond issuance work? There's always so much money. It doesn't always it's not always spent on goods, on the schools and what have you. Some of it's paid up front for incentive for people to buy the bonds or what have you. So just explain that so we all kind of know how it works.
Sure. Typically how this would happen is, as I already mentioned, the sale of the first series. Those series are going to be structured by the financial advisor, again.
And who's that get sold to?
Those usually are sold to some kind of investment bank. Again, a lot of it depends on the size. On something like this, where we're talking millions of dollars in each series, that's usually going to end up with an investment bank. But again, financial advisor really works to try and structure that and sell those. As that is going along, it's important to note that, again, you don't have a balloon 110 at the end. So on 110, you might have over 15 years, 8 million in 1 year, 9 million, 9.5, 8, structured to try and keep the debt service level, structured to try and keep the ad valorem tax level. Because what would happen otherwise if you just try to issue 110 all at once, you're going to get a massive spike in property taxes, and then it falls right back off. The way this is done is it's a levelized, gradual, and constant flow through that, and that's where that series structure comes in. And each one of those series has to be sold to an investor. However, as I mentioned, once the first series is approved as to the form and substance of the election and those types of documents, it makes it easier to get that subsequent approval from the AG.
Is every year payment, is that termed as a series?
Typically, yes. It's usually going to be on a 1 year maturity like that.
So, and I'll just try to, just to, because I don't want to, it's no trick questions or anything, I'm just trying to learn.
No, that's perfect.
So, 110 million, let's just for simplicity say that 30 million is sold in a series or two right up front. And then over the course of the next 15 years, and I don't know if this is 10 or 15 or 20, but let's just say 15, the roughly 85,000 or million divided by 15, 6 point whatever million a year is doled out and paid back.
Right.
And there is, well, I'm not going to go into that, but obviously, bond issuers and bond buyers, they make a little bit of spread off of it somehow or another. That's
right. Most GOs are going to
interest, if you will.
Right. Most GOs are competitively bid.
Right.
And so even though you try and get the absolute best rate, obviously each one of those investors is going to be offering you a rate that's profitable to them too. It'd be nice if everybody was altruistic, but unfortunately, with the investment banks, they're not.
Yeah, I was just looking for a sixth grade level explanation, and I probably screwed that up.
That's
thanks for being here.
That's fine, but I do want to explain on the lease revenue side. That's all on the GOs. The reason that this is so important is those series bonds. If we just left it alone and just said, "Here's your series," the school wouldn't be able to get all that money up front to do their construction with current construction dollars. Construction inflation can sometimes run up to 18%, and y'all probably know this better than anybody. That's not good, especially on a year-to-year. And so what you saw, and you may have experienced it here, you certainly see it a lot of times in smaller districts, you have a brick building, a red brick building, and then a white brick building, and then one that's metal, and then a yellow brick building, and they're all attached to each other, but it doesn't. One portion's really old, one portion's really new, one portion's been constructed well, one portion was put up very quickly, and it's all because they had to vote this series, but they had no mechanism for taking that money up front and being able to construct a single project with those dollars at that time. And that's exactly what we're here for, is a lease revenue bond structure. That allows the school to get in an amount not to exceed $85 million up front, get this built with today's dollars, and then have it paid back with tomorrow's inflated dollars, if you will, through the series of GOs. And it's incredibly beneficial. We've done over 300 of these types of financings in the state, and the schools have just been absolutely ecstatic to be able to do this, especially when they've never been able to to do one, and now all of a sudden they get to see what that's like to be able to build a project in one fell swoop with today's dollars. They really do appreciate that.
Thank you, gentlemen.
No,
We need to move for approval.
Second.
Further discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and that motion carries. We also need an emergency. Would someone make that motion?
I move for approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Item 9.
Consider approval for requested changes to the Muskogee Wellness Initiative bylaws as approved by the Muskogee Wellness Initiative Board at the October 15, 2019 meeting, or take other necessary action.
Oh, it says Mark Wilkinson, but I don't think we have him.
I'm here tonight. Thank
Okay.
you for having me. This is a simple item on our list, the Muskogee Wellness Initiative. I'm here on behalf of the group, and just wish to for approval to approve changes that were voted on by the board specific to the duties and responsibilities. So here's our latest bylaws, and we just would like approval.
Move for approval.
Second.
Any discussion, questions? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs. Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 10.
Consider approval to authorize the City of Muskogee Wellness Initiative to submit a grant application for a community change grant through America Walks in the amount of $1,500 through a partnership with Oklahoma State University, and if awarded, authorize the city manager to accept the grant and execute any necessary documents or take other necessary action.
Brooke again.
Again, another simple item. It's a $1,500 grant, so just an opportunity for us to come up with an innovative, unique program, outreach for the community to encourage healthy living and walking.
Move for approval.
Second.
Discussion? Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Kale.
Yes.
Ivory Van.
Yes.
Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Yes, and the motion carries. Item 11.
Receive report and presentation on the Muskogee Comprehensive Housing Analysis and take any necessary action.
Mr. Garvin.
Mayor, members of council, a few months ago, staff determined that we needed to do a housing analysis for the city of Muskogee. We wanted to find out how many housing units the city of Muskogee can support now, as well as 10 years from now. We also want to know what type and price of housing units, the number of commuters, age and condition of housing stock. Additionally, we partnered with the Muskogee Housing Authority. They wanted to know about the number of rent burden houses within Muskogee. Council agreed. They authorized the city manager to negotiate and execute a contract with the University of Oklahoma. That project started back in June. It is complete, and we have Sean Schaefer, who is the director of OU Urban Design Studio, with us. He also served as project manager on this analysis. He's going to give a presentation and a summary of the housing analysis. I'd ask him to go ahead and come forward.
Thank you, Gary. Madam Mayor, honorable members of the council, ladies and gentlemen, it's an honor and a privilege for me to be here to share the results of the Muskogee Comprehensive Housing Analysis with you. You should have it available to you as part of your packet this evening, the entire report, and I'm going to use a PowerPoint to do a brief 15-minute summary for you.
Good.
As Gary pointed out, this effort began back in June. We followed a fairly straightforward three-step process. We began with extensive data collection and analysis to characterize the housing stock of the city of Muskogee. as well as demographic analysis and various economic analysis associated with housing. We then moved on to a community engagement effort in order to meet with and empathize with folks here in Muskogee to see what the current housing situation is and what they see as demand going forward. And then we moved on to a stage to try to project future demand and come up with strategies for the city to consider for its housing initiatives. Throughout this process, we worked with a 13-member steering committee. The committee consisted of city staff, many of whom are here this evening. We also had representatives from the local real estate and housing industry and members of Muskogee's business community. I'd like to take the opportunity to thank the steering committee for their dedication, knowledge, and hard work. Over the course of the project, we really couldn't have done it without their guidance. In addition to their insight, we had extensive community outreach. We met and did in-depth interviews with over 20 professionals, both within the city and in the industry. We also tried to reach out to residents with focus groups for homeowners, renters, and commuters to the city. One of the things that we found as an emerging theme from this effort that really isn't just about housing, but is sort of an overarching theme, was that people felt that there were negative perceptions about Muskogee that were untrue and don't match reality, and that there was an opportunity to sort of raise civic pride and raise community expectations. And so I just offer that as that's sort of something that goes even beyond the housing study that we heard a lot in our effort.
Sir?
Yes.
Can you go back to that picture? I just want to.
Yes.
Who are these people here?
So Michael, it's hard to see on the screen here, but the man at standing up on the left there is Michael Burks. He's my colleague, faculty member. And then we had some folks that came to a focus group that were homeowners at the city, and so we just took a picture there. They were recruited and volunteered to come. It was open to anyone who wanted to attend.
So you really don't know these people right here around the table?
We have their names, but I don't have them available to give to you at this moment.
That's all I was wanting to know. Cause
Yeah.
I know some of
Okay.
them. Okay. I'm shocked. Go ahead.
Okay.
Appreciate it, sir.
All right. So we did several of these focus groups, and we just wanted to hear the residents' side of things, not just the city side and the folks that are involved in this. We wanted to hear what some of the residents were saying. Okay, so moving into the findings, sort of the overview here is that Muskogee's housing market is improving and offers opportunity for residential development and renovation. Now, I don't have time to go through every last detail that's in that 80-page report that you have, but I'm going to try to hit some of the highlights that show you how we came to this conclusion and how it supports the statement. So the first point is that Muskogee is a metropolitan edge city, and so while Muskogee is not technically part of the Tulsa statistical metropolitan area, because of its close proximity and its excellent transportation connections, it is actually functioning as part of the Tulsa employment market. And for instance, there are over 100,000 jobs within a 45-minute commute of Muskogee. Over a third of those pay more than $40,000 a year. And what we found was that the workers that live in Muskogee and work in the Tulsa employment market represent 1.7% of that market. And if Muskogee maintains that 1.7 penetration rate for the next 10 years, that will actually represent a demand of 360 new housing units. So the way this works is Tulsa's job market continues to grow. Even if you maintain the same penetration rate, it will generate demand. So just about a month ago, Macy's up in Tulsa announced that they were hiring 5,000 people. We could expect 1.7% of that, or 80 jobs, would be filled by people from Muskogee. And so that's how we came up with a number to project the demand for the out commuting, if you will. But also we have people that commute into Muskogee, and that's because Muskogee is a job center. So Muskogee has close to 24,000 jobs. It has a diversified job market with strengths in manufacturing, government and technical services, and healthcare. The number of people that commute to Muskogee that don't live here is about 63% of the job market. So the converse to that is 37% of the people that live in Muskogee, that work in Muskogee, live here, right? So it may seem like a shocking number to think that 63% of your workforce commutes in. But what we found by looking at your peer cities is that that's actually fairly common for a job center like Muskogee. You're a magnet, you have jobs, you attract workers. So Stillwater, Shawnee, same sort of percentages. And that is not necessarily a bad thing, but we did notice that in the last 15 years, you've been trending up. So 15 years ago, you had about 55% of commuters filling the jobs. Now you're up to 63%. So what we think you should try to do is try to increase your capture rate by 5% over the next 10 years and get you down closer to the level that you were. And that would generate another 1,200 potential housing units from jobs from people that were commuting in but now could live here in Muskogee. Another finding is that Muskogee is investing in its quality of life. So projects like your Muskogee Little Theater, Hatbox Field, the Depot Green, these can all be nexuses for housing development. The housing developers are looking for things that will attract residents. The recently approved $110 million bond issue that we just heard about also shows how the community is investing in its quality of life. We all know how important education is for attracting new residents. And Muskogee's housing costs are very affordable. So what you can see here on this chart on the left is the median gross rents. And Muskogee is considerably below the median for the state of Oklahoma and the country as a whole. The same is true for owner costs. The owner costs for mortgage units follow a similar trend. Now, generally, this is a good thing. You want to have affordable housing, but it does raise a difficulty in that it makes it difficult for developers that are building new housing to compete at that price level, because when they build new housing, the infrastructure and construction costs are higher. And so that can actually act as a damper on the amount of housing you're getting built. We found that Muskogee's housing stock is aging. 64% of the structures in the city are more than 50 years old. Only 7% were built in the last 20 years. The single-family homes, for instance, are being demolished 3 times faster than they are being rebuilt in the city. The apartment market has also seen very little new construction in the last 30 years for market rate units. We surveyed some of the apartment complexes, and many of them show very few or almost no vacancy. And there seems to be pent-up demand for newer apartment units. Some of the employers told us they were renting units in neighboring towns for recruits and new hires to their businesses. So what all this means is that we think there is a need for new housing in the city. If you add all of these things up, you get as many as 3,700 units in the next 10 years, which is quite an ambitious number. The way we get to this is with new units, Muskogee would need 1,600 to meet the demand of increasing its capture rate 5%, and maintaining its penetration rate of out-commuters to the Tulsa market. And then in addition to that, we estimate that Muskogee needs to replace or renovate 850 single-family units and 1,300 apartments just to keep up with demolition, obsolescence, and other issues with the current housing stock. So despite these needs, the housing market is not responding to meet the demand. And the developers that we spoke with perceive barriers and risks to entering the Muskogee market, which means Muskogee has to actively try to attract development. They're not just beating on the doors to get in. And I think, your efforts to improve quality of life are admirable and should help produce results there. We think, that the city has opportunity to help change perceptions, particularly with a branding and marketing strategy that just doesn't focus on tourism and events, but tries to attract employers and residents and promoting Muskogee as a good place to live. We also think that the city needs to grow its population of developers interested in infill and restoration. You have a lot of housing stock that could use that. And that's something that the conventional developers are often not that interested in. Many of the ones that we spoke with were more interested in greenfield development, new subdivisions, and the sort. And you're not alone in this. Many cities in the state and nationwide are struggling with this issue. Lastly, both for the infill development and for greenfield development, developers are looking for incentives to mitigate the risk to enter the market and to supplement their development pro formas. So a couple of weeks ago, we had the Quad States American Planning Association conference in Tulsa, and I ran into Farhad Daroga there, and some of you may know Farhad. He's retiring from the city of Broken Arrow as their planning director, and he told me that all the developers that come to Broken Arrow ask for and expect some sort of assistance with their projects. And Broken Arrow is one of the hottest housing markets in the state. And so you can bet if they're getting them from Broken Arrow, they're going to be asking you all for the same sort of thing. We asked the developers what they would like to have, and they gave us a variety of answers. Better information for their due diligence, site assembly and preparation, fewer regulatory burdens, help with infrastructure needs, access to capital, equity and financing, and incentives to increase demand for their product. And it should be noted that Gary and Dan and the city staff actually do provide some of this assistance already, and have been working for many years to attract developers. But I think that there's the developers we're talking to are looking for sort of a structured incentive method that they can use. And that means that Muskogee has to set priorities. They have to set priorities for the type of market segments that are most important for you, and as well as geographic priorities. And again, I don't have time to go into all of each one of the prototypes here. You can read about them in the report. Each one is extensively explicated there. But I do want to talk about some of the main priorities that we found. There's a great demand for middle-income housing. And so this chart it's sort of a busy chart, but what it basically shows is the monthly supply of inventory of houses for sale. So this comes from Realtor data from the multiple listing service. And a balanced housing market should have about a 6-month supply of housing available on the market. And what you can see here in these red boxes is that homes between $60,000 and $200,000 are significantly below that 6-month balance point, particularly the 3 and 4 bedroom, which are down to 2 or 3 month inventories, which are very, very low for that type. So you really need moderate and middle income housing. And this slide is particularly for Mr. Ferris at the Housing Authority. You also have a great need for affordable housing. About a third of the households in the city are rent burdened, and that means that they are spending more than 30% of their income on housing. So even with your low housing costs, you still have a pretty high number of rent burdened households. So we're recommending that about a third of the new housing should be affordable to help alleviate that. We heard in our interviews and focus groups and meetings with the steering committee that there's more housing choice needed in the community. And this ranges from things like accessory dwelling units, which are sometimes called granny flats or garage apartments, cottage or tiny homes, which is a trend these days, single room occupancies, middle income developments, full service gated communities, and ranchettes for country living. These are all different housing types that we heard from the community. Also, the city of Muskogee has a high percentage of disabled individuals. I think part of this is because you have the Veterans Hospital here and you have a large veterans population. You also have an aging population and a current deficit in existing units. And so we would say that the city should set a goal for 20% of its housing to be accessible of the new housing that is built. So that about sums up my comments. I do want to take the opportunity to thank Gary and his staff and the city of Muskogee for the opportunity to work on the project. The Christopher C. Gibbs College of Architecture, the Urban Design Studio, and the Institute for Quality Communities greatly appreciate it. This sort of project allows us to provide learning opportunities. So we had a number of graduate students that worked on the report with us. And even though we're delivering the report to you this evening, our efforts continue. We've had a long-standing relationship with the city of Muskogee, and I actually have 6 graduate students right now that are working with Founders Place to develop one of these housing prototypes, and they're going to produce a community pattern book that can be used to guide and try to attract infill development in the city's historic districts. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions you might have for me.
Do we need to take any action?
I don't think that there's any need to. Yeah, we'll just need to take action to receive a report, not anything further.
It's very informative. Does anyone have any questions?
Yes, ma'am. May I be recognized?
Yes.
Sir, did you go around and look at Muskogee? Some of the houses has been remodeled.
Yes.
What do you think of them?
Well, I think they vary quite a bit. Some have been meticulously restored, and others have maybe been done just to stabilize them, right? Just get a roof on it, kind of thing. So you have a lot of variation. I think one of the issues that we notice is that a lot of the neighborhoods. There's a lot of there's an inconsistent pattern where you might have a vacant lot, then you have a very nice home, then you maybe have a home that has some deterioration, and the city really needs to concentrate in specific areas to try to get a mass of housing that is stable and growing. I don't know if that answers your question, but do you want to elaborate more on what you'd like to hear?
I was just curious, if you've been around the houses that these contractors have remodeled, and I see all these beautiful pictures on this screen. How long are you going to be here, sir?
This evening?
No, you're leaving tonight?
Well, I mean, I'm based in Tulsa, and so we've come down all the time,
Councilor Van, I don't think they were looking at the homes that the city has done as part of our project, if that's what you're referring to, as part of our remodel.
Okay.
Is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, that's what I was kind of referring to.
Well, we did look at some of the homes. We did an extensive survey, and in the report you will see a lot of different photographs and things, from looking at the homes.
The next time you come to Muskogee,
yeah,
I'll give you my telephone number. You give me a call, and I want to show you some things that wasn't in these pictures here, that here in Muskogee that we have to deal with as a city councilor, as I am a city councilor, all the councilors up here. I want to show you some things that's not so pretty. You made it look pretty on this picture about the housing in Muskogee, but I want to show you some things that's not so pretty. So I'll give you I have my cards in my truck.
Okay.
When you come to Muskogee, just call me, and I want to take you. I want to show you some things.
I can assure you, we did look at a lot of the issues. Dan,
you didn't look at these issues, sir.
Huh?
You didn't look at these issues.
Well, I mean, we looked at, for instance, all of the code violations for the last 10 years, and the derelict structures, and we talked, for instance, with the police department about if they had a problem with arson. So I mean, we did consider issues like that, but at the same time, we also know that the city wants to use this document to try to attract developers and development, so we didn't want to overly focus on the challenges, because there are actually some very large opportunities here too.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I'd be happy to come and look around. We've been bringing our students down.
Bring your students. I want your students to see this too.
Yeah.
Well, so
we can do that, right?
All right.
Yeah.
That'll be fine. Turn the floor back over to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for the report. One thing that we've always thought, and we've always perceived, that we had middle income housing. We were just missing it. But we can think that and perceive that all we want to, but we needed a report that we could show to others that we need to build up our housing lot. And this is exactly what we needed, where we got documents that we can go out and say, we need more housing in Muskogee. We're missing the mark. So thank you very much for a very put-together, documented report that has substance to it, that we can try to get more homeowners, more home builders into Muskogee to help us fill our gap. Because it's not perceived, it's real, right. and you helped us in so many ways prove that point that we're missing the mark, and it's even bigger than what I thought it was. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Mr. Garvin, let me talk to Mike Miller. Mr. Miller, can we direct staff to put a plan together, kind of like what he was talking about, for like incentivizing houses to be built here? Because that's what I got out of this, is that people aren't going to just run in our door, knock down our door to get here to build houses. So I would like to see an in-depth kind of like a plan of what we need to offer builders to come in and build those houses.
Absolutely, and as you guys recall, we have announced one incentivized plan already, and we're excited about that, and we'll continue to work on that, and I'll be happy to take that direction. Right now, we can certainly have a motion, but that's something that we're already working on and have developed to some degree, and we can roll out for you.
Okay, because after listening to him, I realized that, we're going to have to put the best foot forward to get them to come here and to change our city and our culture, and to keep moving forward. We're going to have to do these things. And the citizens of Muskogee are going to have to realize we're going to have to spend money to get people to come here and to build those houses.
Well, and I do appreciate the foundation supporting our, 3 years they've been supporting our, 3 years they've been supporting our housing
program?
Yeah.
It's been 7 to 10 years.
No, our fill in.
Oh, the incentive?
The incentive program.
Yeah, it was a 2-year project.
I think it's a 2-year project.
Yeah.
There's no way you're going to get somebody to build in infill lots, just like he was talking about a builder. And yet, the foundation has helped us with being able to support that project, that program. And I think that was a really great deal that we jumped out there, and now we've got documented, proof out there that that's an incentive that y'all come up with, and I appreciate your initiation on that. But now we've got, more proof that's another idea that we need to just keep going out there.
Well, and I think that's nice, but I'm looking at the bigger housing sections, housing areas, the greenfield areas, the green space areas. I would like to see something that brings like 30 or 40 houses at a time into our areas, and see what that looks like. See if we can afford that, and see how close.
If I may, if you look in the recommendation section, you will see that we identified 6 prototype areas, and 3 of them are in infill areas and near downtown, the old town site areas, and then 3 of them are more suburban type settings, greenfield type settings. And you might have to have different incentives for the 2 types of developers.
And that's what I'd like to see
Sure.
what it's going to cost us.
Yeah, and to be clear, I think we do want to, if you don't mind me taking just a moment to celebrate a success that we have indeed as a city, and you as the council approved the incentives for a 40-home development here just within the last few weeks, and I truly appreciate you guys doing that, and I understand that we want to be able to do that on an ongoing basis in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
your report.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't believe that we've had anyone sign up to speak
Do you need
to us
action to receive
tonight.
it?
So we will go to item 12.
Consider an executive session to discuss and take possible action on the following. A, pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, consider convening an executive session to discuss litigation related to the national opioid epidemic, and if necessary, take appropriate action in open session.
Mr. Tucker.
I believe we need a motion to convene an executive session.
Move for approval.
Second.
Roll call.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Yes.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Yes.
Patrick Hale.
Yes.
Ivory Van. Derek Reed.
Yes.
Dan Hall.
Yes.
Jamie Stout.
Yes.
And Jenny Boydston.
Yes. And the motion carries. Would you please excuse us while we go into executive? We're back on, and thank you very much. And roll call.
Mayor Janie Boydston.
Here.
Evelyn Hibbs.
Here.
Dan Hall.
Here.
Marlon Coleman. Jamie Stout.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Wayne Johnson.
Here.
Patrick Hale.
Here.
Ivory Van.
Here.
Derek Reed.
Here.
Mr. Tucker.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 12A, pursuant to Section 307B4, Title 25, Oklahoma statutes, the City Council did convene an executive session to discuss litigation related to the national opioid epidemic. After being briefed by the city attorney and the city attorney having received direction, no additional action is necessary at this time. Mayor?
Thank you very much. And with that, we are adjourned.